All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today, we get another dive into the rum category. I know we're mostly whiskey drinkers, but I'm excited to introduce us to a wonderful Hawaiian Agricole rum. This is a distillery I got to visit last year in March when I was in Oahu. Highly recommend if you're out there, give them a try. Joining us from Kohana Distillery is Kyle, who's the general manager. We're excited to have him here. We're going to be tasting 4 different varietals of rum. So last time we did rum, it was all blends. Now we're going to be trying different varietals and seeing how a just a different species and type of sugarcane can affect the spirit. So a little bit more of a deeper dive into the varieties of sugarcane. Joining us today, we have David Donahue, who's the president of Los Angeles Bourbon and Whiskey Society. You want to say a few words, David?
Nadeem, I'd be very happy. As always, I'd like to start by thanking you for all the work that you put into making these virtual tastings happen for all of us very happy participants. So thank you again. Also wanted to do a quick shout out to Matt and Chadwick, who are lived down or born in Hawaii. So there's also other people here that have some Polynesian lineage. So it's great to be able to participate with you, Kyle, on something that I think we're all very fond of, particularly myself and my wife, because we were both married on Waikiki.
Nice.
So we love the place. I got my kukui nuts on, which I always wear when I travel. It's fantastic. So, and also I'm loaded with questions. So whenever we have a chance, I dove into your website and I'm really excited about this. And welcome.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm thrilled to get to virtually meet all of you guys. So this makes me happy. It's I haven't flown off of the island of Oahu in about a year and 3 months. So I'm traveling to you guys virtually. So I don't really know where to start because this is actually my very first group that is really specializing in whiskey. I've done a lot of these with rum folks, so you'll have to excuse me if I'm gonna bring it down a little bit to like 101, and then we're gonna shoot ahead pretty quickly. But I just want to have a similar baseline for where we're all at. Rum must be made. Oh, sorry.
As you're beginning, I just wanted to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I see a couple of fresh faces, and just let me know if you're cool with the way we normally run things. We encourage people to participate in the chat, but if they do want to unmute and ask a question, they're always welcome to. And yeah, normally we just hand it over to you and you kind of keep it flowing, but I'll keep an eye on the chat and make sure that, people don't get kind of people's questions get answered and whatnot. But yeah, if some of the newbies, if you do unmute yourself, make sure you put yourself back on mute so we don't get any background noise, and don't be offended if I help you with that. But other than that, we're here to have fun, participate, ask questions. We're here to learn about rum. So, and that, please take it away.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, so let's just start in the beginning, which is rarely where you're supposed to start, but let's do it just for the sake of, I guess, me. Rum must be made from sugarcane. Rum can be made from any byproduct of that sugarcane and its whole process. So it's a really loose category, but not dissimilar to whiskey in some capacities. They're just different starting materials. So when you think about rum and you see a bottle on a shelf, says rum on it, unfortunately, that doesn't get you nearly as much information as whiskey with a EY or whiskey with a Y may get you, because rum can be made from fresh sugarcane juice, from molasses, from evaporated cane. It could be made from simple syrup. You could rehydrate granulated table sugar, add nutrients, and ferment that and be called rum. And even now, there's still fights that you could make sorghum or honey or all of these other spirits into quote unquote rum. So it's a little bit of a loose category. But when you think about rum, just think about it's birthed from sugarcane and most notably, frankly, from sugar in general. So
can it have additives, or does it have to be 100% sugar cane?
I would like to say it has to be 100% sugar cane derived. That is unfortunately untrue. There's a lot of rum is unfortunately the wild west of the spirits world in a lot of capacities. So there aren't a ton of rules. And it is partially that way because there's no real provenance to it. It can be made anywhere, right? I can buy molasses and distill in Colorado. There's a phenomenal distillery there that does that. I could be at a source in Barbados, like Richard Seal is, or I could be growing my own sugarcane in Hawaii. And all of them are the same according to the TTB, which is an interesting sort of space to start from. And also, if we want to go deep into it, why rum struggles to attack the premium category, but that's a different story for another time. I'm probably more interested in authenticity and truth than a lot of other manufacturers, and it's because we feel like we're protecting something. But that being said, when you think about rum, and you probably venture, I'm sure all of you, especially with great palates, no matter how new you are to a whiskey society, you're going to get past the like Bacardi, Captain Morgan, Myers thing really, really quickly, right? Like that's college age stuff. But that's generally what people think of when they think of rum. Maybe, spiced rum, dark rum, gold rum, whatever it may be. Almost all of those are made from molasses, which is the byproduct of sugar manufacturing. When you cut down sugarcane, juice it, boil it, and eventually end up with white table sugar, like we've been doing for 1,000 years at this point, maybe not quite 1,000, 800, 900 years. You end up with two products. You end up with white table sugar for your pastries and your Cheerios, and you end up with molasses. Molasses still has sugars in it, therefore it's still fermentable. You can take that and make rum. And that's really where the birth of rum starts at, right? It's turning trash into treasure. And it's a really phenomenal and equitable spirit in a lot of ways because of that. We don't do any of that processing at Kohana. So we skip that whole portion and only use fresh sugarcane juice. And that is a style known as Agricole. So when you think about the molasses styles, most of my friends in Martinique, where the style rum Agricole was born, would call the molasses style rum industrial or industrial rum. We're a little kinder. We call it rum traditional, more traditional rum, or classic rum. So when you think about molasses-based rums, Appleton, what Foursquare is doing, Privateer up in Ipswich, wherever it may be, those are, we consider those traditional rums. And then if you skip the processing portion that gets you to molasses, and instead start with fresh sugarcane juice, we use the term Agricole. And for us, because we don't own that style, it's really something that's very important to the people of Martinique. We make sure we attach Hawaiian Agricole on everything we do. So you'll never see the word Agricole in what we do, not with the word Hawaiian in front of it. And this is twofold. I mean, obviously, spirits are becoming more and more place-based. And so we're very proud to be product grown on Hawaii, cut, fermented, distilled, bottled all here. So we really want to show people something from Hawaii can be done top to bottom and exported out. We struggle. The only thing we export is aloha at this point. So it's hospitality and military bases. So it's an interesting space to work in. So we're very, very proud of growing things here that can be shared all across the world. So let's go back to what it is that we share. We only grow heirloom Hawaiian varietals of sugarcane. So I mentioned that all rum must come from sugarcane. It's a plant. Think of heirloom tomatoes, think of the 1 million types of apples out there, the 60 lettuces, whatever it may be. Not all of these things are created equal. When we grow our canes, we grow these heirloom varietals very specifically for their flavors. We don't want to chase them away. And what I mean by this is, in the beginning, when sugarcane very first got to the Caribbean and started being dispersed, and the slave trade happens, America is born, lots of wealth is created. There's some really, really crazy highs and obviously the worst lows of the world. They're not worried about the plant at all. They're just worried about the starting material, and let's get this stuff so we can get people drunk, keep people in check, maybe keep our sailors from, mutiny. The Hawaiians had brought these plants to Hawaii 800 years before contact with the West, and for global context, 500 years before Columbus voyaged to the New World. So Hawaiian sugarcane predates Caribbean sugarcane by about 500 years. And that's every bit of ko, the Hawaiian word for sugarcane, that we grow is that type. So when we say, today we're going to taste through kea, manulele, mahaiula, and papa'a, 4 of the 34 varietals of heirloom Hawaiian sugarcane, those predate Caribbean sugarcane by hundreds of years and Western contact by even a few more hundreds. So they're very interesting canes in the longevity of the world, and very specifically from our lens in Hawaii. So we're very proud to only use heirloom Hawaiian sugarcane in everything that we do. And that's why the Hawaiian Agricole moniker is so important to us. So I got a hand raised, I think.
Yeah. Kyle, I had a question because when I was reading the website and you talk about these heirloom varietals, how were you able to identify that they were from the, such ancient, lineage?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So this serendipity is the true answer. But there was a gentleman named Dr. Noah Lincoln, who was just Noah Lincoln when we first met him. He was doing his PhD research at Stanford, and he is an ethnobotanist, which, yes, that's a real thing. People study plant histories and lineages. And he's a Hawaiian boy, Big Island kid, Kamehameha grad, and he was interested in tracing back these, what we call canoe crops. So when the Hawaiians very first got here, they brought over about 26 plants and animals with them. Most famously is kalo or taro. And most people don't realize that ko or sugarcane was on those earliest canoes. So we worked in lockstep with Dr. Noah Lincoln as he earned the PhD that he so deserves, in doing all of the genetic testing, finding them all. So you got to remember, in the beginning for us, we had sugarcane plantations here starting around 1800, and that's usually when people think about sugar in Hawaii. It predates it by so much further than that, but when the plantations came, they actually eliminated almost all of the Hawaiian cane immediately. It doesn't grow straight up and down. It's not perfect for easy harvest. It's a little too juicy. When you think about these plants, and we'll go through a few of them a little bit later, they're just not, they're like soft skinned. So they're like affectionately known as chewing cane. The plantations didn't like that. So they started eliminating it. And I guess to think about it in the big perspective, you go from, having different canes that have different colors and looks and flavors into making a cane with a singular goal, which is the best sugar you can do. So in 2016, on the last sugar harvest, they were harvesting HC 7382-8, so 7,382 iterations of improvement in Hawaii on cane. And so when you think about it, it's this really amazing, and I don't want to get into a GMO argument or anything like that, but it's just, the science behind it was really fantastic. It got to really great sugar making, but eliminated the flavors, and the flavors are what we're interested in. So going back to these original canes of Hawaii, when you think about flavor, is massively important. It's not dissimilar to like heirloom grapes and going to Sardinia and, trying grapes from a place that haven't been, fucked with. Sorry, I'm getting an emergency alert. If it floods in here, you guys will know I died doing what I love.
Yeah, we'll send you virtual life rafts.
Yeah, there's some stuff I can climb on, and at least I can drink myself somewhere. Sorry, the weather's been a little gnarly.
Does sugarcane float?
Here on Oahu. Sugarcane does float. It's actually a good call. Not all varietals, but I'm sure we can make it work.
It's raining in LA too, so we're worried about floods as well.
All right, so we're all in this together.
That's right.
Sorry, not to get off topic there a little bit. So when we grow these sugarcane, and when we very first started working with Noah, the only places that these plants were found were botanical gardens, growing wild, and in like some practitioners' backyards, because some of them were actually used for like religious purposes. So we ended up finding somewhere around 91 different named plants and about 140 different, what we thought were different looking plants. And as Noah sort of searched through, old history and really dove down to find the lineage of each of them, 34 of them are thought to be actually genetically unique Hawaiian ko. Now, that being said, there's an argument to be made. Were there 2 brought over on the canoes, or were there 7? And over 1,000 years of no written language, did they mutate and change and become different things? That argument actually makes it more of a Hawaiian cane in my eyes, as opposed to less. I don't need to go back to the 2 original canes. I want the canes as they sort of became more intertwined in Hawaii, especially since it was not, intentionally done for some, with malice. So there is an argument to be made there, David, that not every one of them was brought over on a canoe. Maybe there were 7 to 9 or whatever it may be. That argument probably won't ever be sort of sussed out. I'll let the scientists fight it, though. I'll just
Because there's no way to trace it back genetically to Polynesians, where they came from, 2,000 years ago.
No, it's not perfect math. Yeah, it mutates, and like even some of these Hawaiian ko, there are canes that are so similar in Tahiti and Papua New Guinea, which is where we argue sugarcane really began. It actually probably was grown in China first, but Papua New Guinea is a sexier story from an island nation. So I'm just gonna we'll say Papua New Guinea, but
yes,
there's a lot to unravel with all of that and the science. If you're really interested in this stuff, he literally just published the book at the end of 2020. And it's just called KO, ko. So the line over the O is known as the kahako. So KO with the kahako on there is the Hawaiian word for sugarcane. Noah Lincoln published the book. If you're really geeky on it or really find yourself enamored in plants, alcohol, or cultural history, it is phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing. And he has since moved on and is now really focusing on ulu, which is breadfruit. So Noah is kind of systematically going through these old canoe crops and really giving them a place to shine, which I think is phenomenal. Yeah, Ko is the name. I like it. Me too, Jacqueline. All right, so now let's go back to growing these plants. When we started, we collected these canes from mostly those 3 places I talked about: botanical gardens, some aunties' backyards, and things like that. We started out with 100 cuttings of what we thought were Hawaiian canes. And as they were eliminated, we stopped growing them if they were proved not to be. But we went from 1/4 acre, and now we're at the end of this year, we'll be at 300 acres of heirloom Hawaiian sugarcane being grown on the island of Oahu. So in a total of about 11 years, we will have gone from, barely having these plants available to now like being the largest sugarcane grower in Hawaii, and only growing these heirloom things. So it's something I'll be honest, we're just really proud about. We're so thrilled to have sort of conquered the farming issue, as it were. And you may ask why we do all the farming and why we don't outsource it. And the truth is, nobody else wants to grow these things. The math as it relates to sugar and sugarcane in Hawaii doesn't suss out for most people. They're not interested in it. It's a big water suck. It takes a lot of time and land. And so we had to do it ourselves. There was no outsourcing the work. And over time, that's been really phenomenal, because I can name, every single person who's ever cut sugarcane for me in 11 years. Like, I know them. I can make a phone call and ask them, like, what the heck was going on that year? What weird decision did we make about this or that? So there is some control that's been really phenomenal. The other thing it allows us to do is to guarantee what we're doing is as authentic as possible. So when we're cutting our cane, we know where it came from the day we got it until the day it goes into a glass, which is really fantastic. Growing your own cane also allows you to make a style like Agricole. One thing that nobody really talks about in the spirits world is how difficult it is to farm, and then how difficult it is to get a consistent base of whatever it is you may need. Whether you're a whiskey maker making, a mash that's 60% corn and 20% rye and 30% malted barley, or that would be a silly one, but something like that. You need to guarantee the provenance of where all these things came from, just from a quality standpoint. So for us, it's really great to be able to grow these canes because obsessively I can control it from start to finish, from grass to glass, from field to bottle, whatever silly marketing moniker we want to go with. But that's the truth. So we grow every bit of sugarcane ourselves that goes into these bottles.
Kyle,
it's also
quick question.
Yeah.
What part of the island do you grow it on, or is it all on Oahu exclusively?
Yeah, so our distillery is on Oahu, and because of the need to be close to the cane, every farm is on Oahu. That being said, we have a farm in Waialua, a farm in Haleiwa, where it just flooded, unfortunately. And then we've got an estate farm here in Kunia. So we're located in Kunia, central Oahu, right at the base of the Waianaes, facing inland. So we're
Looks like the weather's getting to you, Kyle.
Oh, sorry, I lost you guys for a second there.
You're back.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
sorry.
Sorry to hear about North Shore.
What's up on the North Shore? Is that why I left?
Sorry to hear about North Shore
Oh.
flooding.
Yeah, it's brutal. Haleiwa town was under like 4 to 5 feet of water 2 nights ago. My farm manager actually slept in a container on Tuesday night up there because he couldn't get out. So God bless him. He's had a couple of days off since then. He's a nice guy. So having the proximity to these co is really important to us to make awesome rum, because if you don't have fresh sugarcane juice, you can't make Agricole, or you're going to make bad Agricole rum. Because as soon as you juice sugarcane, it starts to oxidize, and you don't want oxidation to happen before fermentation can occur for obvious reasons. You don't want your juice going bad before you ferment it and make something delicious out of it. So when we crush our cane and get it to fermentation, from cut to fermentation is under 24 hours every single time, which is really important to us. Up until now, we have grown 11 different cane for production, and every bit of it is hand harvested at the moment. So it's all machete harvested. That sounds really amazing, and it is a romantic story. We are going to go away from that as soon as humanly possible. It's hard work. I've cut cane for 7 of those 11 years. I want people to retire with me. So when you hear that Kohana went to mechanized harvesters and stuff, I'll look you straight in the face. It's because I want farmers retiring with me, not breaking them. So there'll be a moment somewhere down the line when we're super cool and out there everywhere in the world, and people will be like, oh, Kohana, they used to hand harvest everything. It used to be so romantic. That's cool, and I dig that. We've done it for years. It's a really efficient way, an inefficient way, but a romantic way of doing it. But I'm buying a harvester right now because I've got a 24-year-old kid that harvests cane for me. My biggest goal is for him to be able to work with us indefinitely, and I don't want it to be backbreaking forever. So we do everything by hand at the moment, but we're turning away from that a little bit. It gets cut and crushed within that 24-hour window, gets fermented. The fermentation actually begins in the field and not in some kooky, there's yeast on everything, so obviously fermentation starts. We actually pitch yeast in the field. We do inoculated yeast, so we have our own strain of yeast that we use. It gets pitched in the field. We don't do a wild ferment. If you look behind me here, you'll see there's a little, hopefully you can see, it's a little
Please excuse our technical difficulties. We will be right back.
There's the weather. There's moving your computer around.
Sorry, guys. That's what happens. My bad. All right, so my apologies. So 5 crushes a week, or 5 harvest days a week, somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 gallons of fresh sugarcane juice comes up here every week, and we allow it to ferment to dry. Question?
You said you ferment in the field. I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. Are you saying that it's the sugarcane is the juice is fermenting while it's still on the stalks?
No. So let me go back 2 steps. So usually what you'll do is you will add yeast to something that has sugar to turn it into booze, right? That's the science. We add our yeast as the cane is being juiced in our field. So we add it out there and then bring it up and pump it. And it's actually
when they're collecting, when they're harvesting, they're juicing it right then and there.
Right away. So we're probably the only people in the world that juice in our field. We literally have a generator and a mill, and we just drop them on pads out in our field, and they cut and crush right there on site. We tried to shorten the distance between cutting and getting it fermented by as much as possible. So there are moments that the cut to crush will be under 30 minutes, which is crazy. Most places are comfortable with a 2-day lag.
Wow.
We're not. So
and how much sugarcane would you say you need to produce 1 bottle of rum?
It's different, because if you look at, this is papa'a, this like little skinny cane here, and then this is pili mai. So it all depends. Obviously, it's 4 times the size. It depends. We get about 4 tons of sugarcane in a cutting. So think 8,000 pounds of cane. That'll give us 500 gallons of juice, which will give me somewhere around 50 proof gallons at a maximum of rum. So if you back into it, you're probably getting like 10 stocks to a bottle of rum, maybe 20. So it's not efficient in the way like molasses is, but it works for us.
Kyle, what's the reasoning for fermenting in the field?
Yeah, so the reason to begin fermentation in the field is if you've got competing processes, right? So oxidation is beginning to occur right away. If it takes my team 3 hours to juice all that cane, we've got 3 hours that oxidation is winning out and fermentation is not out competing that. So what I would prefer is to get a CO2 cap on top of it. So when yeast is eating sugar, it creates heat because it's exothermic, a lot of carbon dioxide, and then it creates ethyl alcohol, which is what we care about, and the flavor molecules. Well, getting that CO2 cap on there and allowing fermentation to begin instead of just letting the cane juice sit in the sun and be baked is important just from a quality standpoint. It just tastes better. And we tried it both ways. We did it the lazy way for a little while and like, oh, juice out there, we'll add yeast as soon as it gets to the distillery and we pump into one of our, sanitized tanks. And it's so much better to begin it in the field for us.
And are there any, this is maybe a little off topic, but are there any dogs or animals that you're worried about when you're picking and doing it right then in the field?
Yeah, so traditionally sugarcane fields are burned to try to eliminate pests. We don't have a lot of bad stuff here. Like in Florida, Louisiana, they worry a lot about some very significant pests. But we don't have snakes. We don't have a lot of bad stuff up here. So it's mostly just rats. So we have rodents because the mountains behind us haven't been very well cared for years. And then pigs. And the pigs don't actually like to eat it per se. They just smell the sweetness and the watery root section, and we'll just dig them up. So that's really all we worry about is like the boars or the rats. And then there's a really terrible disease called smut, which I'm not even supposed to say out loud, that we have to worry about, that just essentially will can kill entire crops. But it's also why we have our farms split out by the distance they are, and we don't cross over any equipment from one to another. It's been years since any smut was on the island, but you still have to be really fearful when you're, making 10,000 cases of rum and trying to grow to 100,000 cases. You don't want to reintroduce any bad pests. So those are the ones. But yeah, the field is, Hawaii is an interesting place for a lot of reasons. It's an expensive place to do business, but we're really fortunate because there are a lot of positives that come out of it, like we don't have crazy pests and things like that. So yeah. I got a question about harvest season, this is a really great time to ask about it. Another benefit of Hawaii is we can harvest year round. We don't really get the hard chill that ever occurs. It's paradise all of the time. Even if there is a flash flood warning, it's still paradise. So no, we harvest year round, and actually, as far as I know, there's one group in Fiji and us that do year-round harvesting, and that's it. I don't know of anybody else that does all the time. Martinique has a very specific window for their agricole, and most of the rest of the world tries to shorten the window as much as possible because that's money. Time is money. So if you're doing sugar as opposed to sugarcane juice, it's a totally different beast too. So once we've harvested our cane, juiced it, and fermentation begins, I guess this is a good point to talk about like some of the space, the whys as to what we do. So we got the why as to why we start fermentation in the field. There are some positives with starting fermentation out there, and then when you use a pump, you overly oxygenate what's happening. So there's some really cool things that happen with us in helping the fermentation along as well without having to use anything crazy. But we ferment to dry, and we do closed top fermentation. So both of these are for the same reason. We ferment to dry because we don't want to leave any sugar on the table, but also we want a consistency in all of our fermentation runs. And we close top ferment everything because we don't want anything else impacting the rum. So the reasons for this are really straightforward. As Hana, we are focused on single varietal Hawaiian Agricole rums. As soon as I start introducing second and third layer changes to these things, whether it's doing a timeline for fermentation or allowing other yeast into my fermentables, I become less focused on the cane and more focused on production. And I talk about this all the time, and this is probably like the intro talk on this probably isn't the place for it, but I talk about the 4 Ps. I talk about the produce, the place, the people, and then the production. And we're very focused on the produce. Like we're interested in that beginning, that plant, that very first P. And so everything else we do is to allow that P to shine. You won't hear us talk a lot about I'll tell you all about our production methods, but it's not where we puff out our chest. I saw a question, David.
I had a question. What does ferment to dry mean?
Okay, so to ferment to dry means you allow the yeast to eat all of the sugar. So there are, essentially you just don't leave any sugar on the table. So there are a number of distilleries, wineries, and breweries that all ferment to points along there, and we let every bit of sugar be consumed. And we'll come back to these plants a little later as we talk through the actual rums, but you can imagine that these 3 different looking beasts also might have different sugar inside of them, the level of bricks. So if we choose a point, a specific gravity to allow the fermentation to drop to, we're actually stealing something about what that plant is trying to show. So we let everything go as far as it can, no matter how long it takes. So we've had ferments go 17 days. We've also had them go 3 days. So we just let it be. And that can get a little complicated because ask any distiller anywhere, if you don't control your ferments and you're not really on top of that, it can get out of hand. But we're very crazy sanitary around here, and that's part of why we have to allow it that. So ferment to dry for as long as it takes, and then we're going to pump it into our still. And this is our still sitting behind me here. I'm hoping to not lose you guys when I pull it up this time. There is a little helmet. So that is a 550-gallon stainless steel jacketed hybrid still. People get really caught up in pot versus column, and I think there's good reason for it, because I think generally you can think, pot distillation gets you this, but I'd really rather talk about batch distillation versus continuous. And we use a hybrid still and batch distillation. And what batch distillation is it's the ability to, yeah, we can start drinking. Sorry, I'll hurry up. My bad. Sorry, shit.
We're not in a hurry by any means, but people
Okay,
want to take
okay.
a sip. It's all good.
Everyone should definitely sip. And I wish I could be pouring for you. You deserve probably larger pours because you have to listen to me. When you think about distillation, so I'm just going to go back 2 steps. Most people talk about columns like what's here versus pot like what's over there. That is a little bit of a archaic way of thinking about it, because it's less about the apparatus you're using and more about how you're using it. What we do is we do a distillation topic called batch distillation. We think about distillations as having a true start and a true finish. We turn on the boiler, we begin our run, we make our heads, hearts, and tails cuts, and then the run is done. And that is it. It's not a continuous running thing. When you do continuous distillation, or think of like huge column distillation, classically, you're more interested in the place and the flavors that are coming off and allowing it to continue. And I'm not saying it runs 24 hours a day all year long, but in continuous distillation, it's less about starts and finishes and more about where it is in the run. And what I mean by this is, if you look at my little 4 bubble plate column that you see right here, you can, if you were just running a continuous, we can't do it here, so it's a little bit of a bad example. The apparatus would look different. But if you were just pulling from, you had a little spigot coming out from the side of that second sight glass there, that would be how you would be actually extracting things in continuous distillation. So you'd be pulling from a space, not from time. And it's a little bit complicated, but yes. Heads, hearts, and tails run, Jeffrey. So as we turn on our still and begin our batch distillation, the beauty of the physical world is that ethanol has a lower boiling point than water. It boils at about 72 degrees Celsius. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. We use that fact to distill things. What we're going to do is we're going to turn on our boiler and begin heating up that solution. And you can think of it like this. That's a glorified tea kettle, and anything alcoholic I poured in that tea kettle, I could distill. And so let's just take that analogy for what it is. I'm going to put the tea kettle on the stove. I'm going to turn on the stove, and the very first things that squeal, that very first vapors that start coming out of that tea kettle are all alcohol vapors. And we're leaving behind water. So if I pour Budweiser in there at like 3.5%, I'm screaming off the ethanol vapors and some other flavor molecules and leaving behind water. And that's the same thing that occurs here. So when we ferment, we get something that's around 8.5 to 10% sugarcane wine. I'm going to put it into that still, begin to heat it up, and I'm going to use the rest of this fancy apparatus to clean up and make the spirit taste delicious. Wet basketball and floral notes. I like wet basketball. That's fair.
So how many times do you distill? And I forgot my other question.
One time. So we have it's a
Wow.
single start finish. And the way this still is built is with that in mind. So you see these 3 different pieces here. So this is our pot. This is a rectification column, and then there's a condenser with a little parrot here. So when you're thinking about how this works together, you've got this pot. It begins to boil. The vapors are traveling up, and you can probably see the steam from today's run going up there. But if it's closed, all of those vapors are going to the top of that helmet that's up there. And there's like the bubble encased helmet that's all copper. At the very top, there is a pipe. I don't have a good example of what it is, but think of a pipe that's the same size as this one running to the top of that helmet. And the magic is when the right vapors get to the very tippy top of the helmet, they will actually come down and across through this Lin arm here. At this point, you'll have gone from a 10% alcohol sugarcane wine to somewhere around 18 to 22% ABV. So you've doubled yourself. And at every single one of these sight glasses, there's a plate sitting there with what look like a bunch of mushroom caps on. So what it does is it boils up and then gets caught, and you'll just see little catchments of alcohol at each one of those. And as it travels up the column, at every level, you get a higher and higher alcohol percentage. At the very top of the whole machine is a funny named piece known as a deflegmator. What it is a partial condenser or a glorified radiator. It allows some vapor through and turns others back into liquid to allow for more rectification. And then in the end, you end up with a column that is turning every bit of vapor into liquid and rum pouring out the end. And that's the science of how it goes through. At every single one of those steps along the way, you're getting more purification of ethyl alcohol. So you're going from 10% to 22 to 40. And eventually we could blast this system and do stuff that's in the like 87, 88% if we really wanted to. We could make something really neutral. We don't, because we're not interested in neutrality, but we could. And the beauty of frankly, such a simple piece of equipment as this, to be able to get that high proof alcohol all in a single pass is really, really cool. So we are, as a company, I tease all the time, like we are so singular. We're single varietal, we're single distillation, we're single barrel. Like it's all these, like we're very linear in that way and very like sort of stuck, but in a good way, hopefully. So that's the science about what's happening. We grow this beautiful cane, we ferment, and then we allow sort of our knowledge of the physical sciences to carry through. But the art of everything, and I think we got a question a couple minutes ago about heads, hearts, and tails. That's the art of distillation. There's a production space thing that's really great about guys being willing to provide environments for things to be successful. So like keeping tanks really clean, picking the right yeast, but all of those are natural processes that are occurring. Even turning on the boiler and boiling away alcohol, like that's something else acting upon it, not really us. The choices that we are making are what's delicious enough to be called Kohana rum as it pours off of a still. So in any distillation run for a batch distiller, you have the heads, the hearts, and the tails. The heads are going to have heady notes. If you've ever tasted bad hooch, it's probably because they were greedy and left in too much heads. It's the stuff that tastes like acetone and nail polish remover. It's like, it's got like the bad, like cardboard, cardboard, like buttered cardboard, I like to call it sometimes. Like it's just this weird stuff. And that's the heads. We actually use it as cleaning solution around here because I don't want to use it for anything else. So we clean our floors and clean everything with it. Don't tell the government that. We dispose of it correctly, everyone.
They just call it gin.
The second portion of the run is known as the hearts, and the hearts is going to be what becomes Kohana rum, what actually gets put in a bottle. And I'll come back to the hearts in just a moment. And at the very end of a distillation run, which takes us somewhere around 7.5 to 9 hours, depending on what we're up to and how greedy we're being, the last portion is known as the tails. And the tails can often still have a really delicious flavor, but it's almost always covered up with a bad texture, usually an oily texture. So it's actually easier to feel tails for me than it is to smell them. There are people that do a really great job of like what that moment, that smell that goes into tails is, but the heads and tails get cut off and you keep the hearts. And the way all of this works is basically based on boiling point. So you can think about molecular weight to a certain extent. You can think about like van der Waals forces and like why something would have the boiling point that it does. But the proof in the pudding is in the eating, right? So it's really about getting the delicious thing and knowing the other stuff's not great. So you don't have to be a freaking, you know, physical, you don't have to be a chemistry major to really dig it and understand at the end what tastes good is supposed to go into bottles, and you're supposed to be smart enough not to put the other stuff in there. Heads and tails are bad. The hearts do not all taste the same. And this is probably the most important bit of the whole, like talking about unaged spirits. This is where the nuance is in them. When you're distilling something, it doesn't taste like just that rum flowing off the spigot for the entire time. It has different waves of flavor. And for us, very specifically, the very first delicious portion of the hearts is all going to be floral and tropical notes. It's going to be lychee and banana blossom. It's going to be, no matter what cane it is. And there's going to be more or less depending on what cane we're talking about, but it's always going to start with tropicals, grassy, and florals. Midway through the run, you're going to end up with your fruits. So you're going to end up with your olives, your limes, your banana, your baked banana, your lychee. Any of your like fruit notes are about midway through. And then towards the end, you end up with candies and herbs. And that's sort of the three ways. So I'm telling you this to position you for our tasting that we're going to go through. This is the way I look at tasting through our spirit is think about florals, fruits, and herbs, or think about, you know, grass, fruits, and candies, or whatever it may be. And that's really during a distillation run, during that hearts portion, which is usually about 4.5 hours of distilling, we're going through heavy, like floral moments, and then getting into like crazy, like black olive, like there's like, you know, minutes of, you know, it just being like, holy cow, like there's nothing but black olive, like with a little weird anisette in this moment right now. Like, and it does that. And it's a really phenomenal thing. And I don't think a lot of distillers talk about the differences within the heart, but I think it's what informs you as you taste things, whatever it is, especially when it's not a spirit that's being acted on in the end. So once we've collected our hearts, which I'll go through some of the more common flavor notes as we get into the rums, but after we've collected that, we are going to rest it in stainless steel for a minimum of 3 months every single time. And the reason for this is oxidation, not oxygenation. So it's not adding, we're not adding oxygen. We're not like pumping in oxygen, but the actual act of allowing the stew to stew is really important for spirits. It's phenomenal how infrequent it's talked about in aged spirits, but oxidation as opposed to extraction is why you can't fake aging. Oxidation matters so much. So even for our white spirit, it rests for a minimum of 3 months. We're adamant about it and totally stolen from all the best spirits makers the world over. Like, this is not like, we didn't invent this thing. Like the French do it incredible. Like even in Mexico, like even some of my favorite mezcal folks, they rest it. Like it works. So everything we do for our white rums gets rested for a minimum of 3 months. And then when we get to talking aging spirits later, we can talk a little bit about that, but it rests for a minimum of 3 months. And then for everything we do, the only ingredients inside of the bottle are Hawaiian sugarcane juice, our yeast, and Hawaiian water. That's it. No sugar added, no coloring added, no nothing, no craziness, no, you know, no silliness. It is truly as pure as we can make it. And that's what's inside of there. So we're like an hour in. You guys deserve to start getting to taste some rum. So maybe let's jump into some of these. I appreciate your patience with me, letting me wax poetic. I've actually been off of work for 2 days sick. So like I'm getting a lot of joy being able to talk. So thanks for bearing with me, guys.
We're excited to get started. And you don't have to get to it right now, but while we're on this topic, I wanted to ask, when you're doing the hearts, what ABV is it coming off as that you're pulling? And
Yeah,
then
so
have you ever tried separating those in the hearts, micro hearts of like, oh my God, it's just olives right now. Oh my God, it's this. And then doing a deconstruction run and just like tasting those things.
Yeah, so especially early on, to answer the first question, sorry, I lost the first question because I thought about fractional distillation. What was the first portion?
What ABV you're pulling?
Proof. So we are not stuck with like, oh, we're gonna pull at a single proof. We're more interested in the aggregate. That being said, we start our runs at about 155 and end them about 140. So for the hearts portion, so it ends up somewhere generally around 151, 152 as an aggregate. And then it drops to 140. And to answer the fractional distillation question, that's what collecting those individual portions is called. We did that for years. We would do one run a week that was all fractionally distilled. And anytime we would do a new cane type, we would do it and just try to make sure like we're honing in where we want to be. But it's twofold, really. It's when you do that, it allows you the opportunity to it allows you the opportunity to make a mistake without it being a mistake, because you're just collecting mason jar after mason jar and you just got them all set out. So you can hone in your hearts and tails cut really, really tightly by doing that. So it's really more of an informed thing, knowing like, okay, when Kea hits, like there's this dead mint thing that happens at the end of Kea. When Kea hits that in the run, and I like it. I'm not saying it's not bad. It's like 1 day too old mint or something. When it hits that in the run, we know that's it. Like cut bait, because the next flavor that comes off of there is actually like dead herbs. So it's like you have this really sweet spot, and you only know that by practicing and tasting. None of the other canes that we're going to taste today have that particular flavor occur at that point in the run, but they have their own. So there's like Manulele does this like aftertaste of eating red hots. It's like this fake cinnamon flavor. When we hit that in our run, we know we are on the edge of where that's going to go. And every single one of them kind of has its own. There's some that have the same, but yeah. It's tough to talk about distillation because like I'll say something like, dead mint or like old mint or something, and it's not meant as a negative. Like it's just a flavor note that plays along with these other things. Sometimes it can be a little like, why is he always talking about bad flavors? No, that's not it. It's informed. Awesome. So let's crack into Kea, shall we? Does everybody still have some? Yep. Hopefully it hasn't died in your glass. I didn't. If I wouldn't have told you guys to pour if I knew I was going to talk for an hour. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear my voice.
Coleman, did you drink all yours?
Oh, he's on
already finished his.
A new bottle he already bought.
I owe you, thanks. So Kea is the cane you see in front of you right now. For those of you who are not of Polynesian descent or spent time in Hawaii, Kea is the Hawaiian word for white, like Mauna Kea. So you can see one of the reasons why it's called that is it gets this white waxy film on it. And then it's also white around the nodes. Kea is sort of the namesake of all that we do. So you'll see Kea on the front of our bottle for our white rums. And then on the side, you'll see when it was harvested and what actual cane type is inside. This is the sugarcane Kea. Kea was thought to be King Kamehameha the Great's favorite cane. It has some really phenomenal history, but it does look a lot like your classic sugarcane that you'll see all over the world. Now, that's probably with good reason, because it's the one that grows the straightest. It's really classically maybe the easiest of all of our canes to grow. And from a flavor perspective, it is probably the closest to what any other Agricole maker makes. So when you're thinking about the flavors that you get off of this one, these are more in tune with what our cousins at other distilleries would be making in a lot of capacities, and not in a bad way, but in a good way. So, not to oversimplify things, but when you think about the rums that we make, you can think of them like a winemaker thinks of his grapes or her grapes. Obviously, red grapes, yellow grapes, green grapes, they're not tasting the same. They shouldn't be treated the same. And they obviously have very different flavors. When you think about Kea versus Manulele or Mahaiula, you have, there should be some assumptions that are pretty easily made on what it is. Our yellow and green canes tend to be much more grass focused and herbs as opposed to fruits and candies. That being said, those flavors are still there, but you can think of them, they're way higher notes. So do you guys mind sharing some of the notes? I don't like doing the suggestive tasting thing, but I'll talk through what we've got going on. What are you guys getting off of Kea, for those of you that still have it, or for those of you that remember what it tasted like?
On the nose, I think that Amanda kind of helped me identify it. I was thinking, wet basketball, but it was like the black olive. And
Yeah.
I thought she really hit it on the head, because it was just like, yeah, that's it. And then on the front of it, I think it's 80 proof. All of these they're very smooth. The mouthfeel is really nice. Floral notes, a little bit of cereal to it, but really enjoyed it. The one thing that I always kind of find unusual about rums is that the nose is how it smells at the front, and then how it tastes can be completely two different things. And that's what I get with Kea.
Yeah, it can be night and day. I mean, that can be a turn off or a turn on, I guess, depending on how you envision it. But we do it intentionally. Like, we make a rum trying to fly out of the glass as far as flavors go, even at 80 proof. And then we want the texture to be, and that's why the pot still, we want that texture to be nice and smooth. And to be able to create a texture without adding sugar is its own art.
And you're not chill filtering or anything like that?
No chill filter. We do plate filter for our aged spirits, but just really quick micron filters, nothing crazy. Yeah, we don't, I couldn't afford to chill filter, but we don't.
But you're not worried about haziness on a clear spirit, right?
No. You don't have to worry about any like flocculation. You don't have to worry about any of the stuff that my whiskey brethren worry about. We do with our aged spirits, but not with the unaged.
And
all right, so
is Kea your like go-to? That's the one that you make sugar juice out of at the distillery, right? That's like the staple, right?
Kea is almost always available. It is what we have the majority of our fields planted as. So we have it's a go-to for us.
So like what I'm saying, because when I went to visit, one of the things that you get when you walk in is a little sample.
Oh, the fresh cane juice?
Yeah, that would be Kea.
Yeah. Almost always. That being said, we've changed to whatever they're harvesting.
Oh, wow.
For a couple obvious reasons. I've already got it cut, and it makes it a little bit more fun. We were struggling getting locals to return as often as we wanted them to, and actually come and experience it. We're very lucky people come and buy bottles all the time, but we kind of want people to hang out a little longer. At least we did before we couldn't show people around. And so we would actually change that more often.
And does the sugar
but-
juice taste different?
Yeah, it actually looks different too. So like if you juice papa'a, you'll actually end up with like this grayish green juice because the color of the skin actually imparts itself onto the juice, which is also
And
why the flavor.
How long is that juice good, and does it need to be refrigerated?
It needs to be refrigerated immediately, and the reason why we start fermentation in the field is it begins to oxidize super fast. Like, has anybody actually juiced apple juice before, where like you take that, like, yeah, it's the same exact thing. Like 2 minutes later, you go from beautiful, clear, green to brown. It still tastes awesome, right? Apple juice still tastes great, but it changes. And once you know that change is occurring, there have to be other microbial issues. So for us, the reason why you got fresh juice sugarcane, and the reason why we don't sell sugarcane juice is because it's not a good reflection of who we are a day later. We're not a day later type of place. So
One of the questions
group,
just
Quag grows his own sugarcane, so rate his house.
What?
Sugarcane. Yeah, the house he moved into just has sugarcane.
now we need to find out what varietal he's growing, Vadim.
Right? We all do. Yeah.
We need to find it out. So Kyle, one of the questions that just popped up right now is the machinery that you use to juice it. And this is just very simple, rudimentary. It just presses it out.
Yep. So it's what's known as a roller mill. So there are 4 very large, around 250, 300 pound rollers that sit, and we push it through the front, and the first 2 rollers, they're turning this way, and they grab hold of it and just press the juice down. So it's not a hydraulic press, but you could think of it like a hydraulic press. It's just pushing this down as we're feeding it in the end. So it's a 2 ton per hour, 4 roller mill made in India. Unfortunately, there's no US manufacturers for much of this stuff anymore. But it's a herky, awesome, dangerous beast.
The image I have is like if you're doing a tree trimmer, somebody who's going to be, cutting down the branches, and you stick it in, it shreds it into a million pieces. But much more simple and much more nuanced, of course. The question I have, when you were touching on it, when you're talking about how you do everything in the field, you cut it, you press it, and then you get the yeast on it right away. So the leftover byproduct, all that, squeezed cane, you can just leave those right in the field, and then you can kind of do whatever you need to there. So it probably saves a lot of time and effort as opposed to having to haul them all the way to the distillery.
Well, it's an excellent point, because in truth, trying to be responsible farmers, we are the spent sugarcane, after it's been juiced out, still has tons of deliciousness in there. You got to remember, like, lots of potassium, lots of nitrogen. This thing still got a lot going, including water still inside of it. We just lay it back down in the field, and if they're big enough piles, we'll just start composting them. So yeah, no, we don't have to. We save 2 hauls, and we're able to farm, frankly, just more intelligently. If you cover where you just cut, because we don't till the whole thing in, we actually let it regrow. Sugarcane's a grass, so we just cut low, and then if you cover all of that, the sugarcane already has root structure. It's just going to go searching for sun, so sugarcane pops back up, but no weeds grow. So it's like our own natural weed mat. So yeah, it's.
Thank you. That's a wonderful example. I love it even more.
It's just, yeah. And I lost you guys for a second, so hopefully I caught the whole question. I did see a really good question on here as well from Hana about how we do our dilution. Very, 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 very slowly. So one of the reasons why our rum is so aromatic is how slowly we add water. I'm sure if there were some of the very biggest, and I don't know how you guys all feel about whiskey, but maybe you guys would all be like, oh, like cask strength whiskey's where it's at. It's the only thing that matters. and I think there's a space for that. We go way on the other end. These are all introductory rums. We're trying to share Hawaiian rum with the world. And so 80 proof is like this perfect moment, but to still be able to get the vibrancy coming out of the glass and all of those aromatics, if you add water really fast, it crashes that. You're going to cost yourself all of the hard work. So our water add is really, really slow. And we don't add it in the beginning, we add it in the end. So the 3 months is done, the 3 month resting is done at proof. And then we slowly add water for the next about 2.5 weeks to get us down. So it's a very slow add. And it's reverse osmosis Hawaiian water. We do no adds to it, but we do strip it. It is RO. And that's just a function of not trusting other people with water. You guys want to dive into Manulele? Let's talk a little bit about Manulele as it relates to Hawaii, and then we'll talk about its flavors. So Manulele means bird in flight or flying bird. And Manulele with these, this is good because this is actually the same cane. Interestingly enough, mutations are weird, but you'll get this like these weird, these green and purple stripes. Manulele was one of those canes that was used in religious practices. It was thought to be able to go out and actually retrieve love. So there were these 3 love magic ceremonies known as Hana Aloha. And I only tell these stories as a connection to like pre-commodity sugar, not because I practice any sort of Hawaiian religion. I am not Hawaiian. I just like to share some of these awesome stories. Manulele was thought to contain the ability to send out and retrieve love. So whether it was a son who was lost at sea or your own lover who had maybe gone astray, you could actually go to the Kahuna Hana Aloha and they could perform a ceremony with Manulele or Papa'a or Pili Mai or Laukona, and these canes would do different things. And they're called the love canes, and there's some stuff with that, but the story behind like being able to salvage love or bring love back is a really cool one. And Manulele is the first Hawaiian cane we ever found. So the whole, like Noah and our founder, Robert Dawson. So there's 2 founders, Robert and Jason. Robert and Noah were on a hike together and found Manulele. And it was like a moment of like screams. They were in Manawili and like found this cane, and it's like, it's so beloved by us. That being said, I still want to hear what you think about how it tastes and what you're getting off of it. There's definitely some sulfur notes. I saw that pop up. It definitely gets a lot more like, it's more rooted and herbal. Different matches.
I want to say both of them remind me of like a Brazilian rum. I don't know if anybody.
Cachaça?
Yeah, cachaça. Yeah, totally. Real earthy.
Cachaça is a kissing cousin of rum Agricole. They have less rules, but the good cachaça makers do a great job.
Even less rules.
Yeah, even less rules. Yeah, they can add cereal grains to their washes. They can do all kinds of stuff.
It's got that Jamaican funk to it.
I like, that's a very nice compliment because Jamaican rums, they work really hard to get that funk.
This one to me had the most body to it, like fullness to it, like flavor wise. Because I've drank them all. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. I'm one of those dudes.
No, you're good.
And like to me, this has a full bodiness to it. And I don't want to be a jerk or anything. I specifically got me a Coke too to see how they flow with Coke. And what I noticed about your stuff compared to Captain Morgan and all the niche, the regular old stuff that we can drink.
Yeah.
I feel like Coke, and when you drink Captain Morgan, I'm sorry, and so I know we're recording, but I feel like just sugar on sugar. Your stuff has at the back end of the palate, it still shines through. Every one of them differently per se, which is great, which is awesome. So yeah, I think this one to me out of all of them had the most body, and to me it was something I would drink without anything, just regularly straight up. It's really good.
Yeah, nice. I dig that. And as a rum maker, if I got offended when people used Coke, I would be in the wrong business. So I'm all for that, man. I appreciate all of it. Now, I'd get in trouble for drinking a Coke. My lady would, smack me around, but now I want a Coca. Now I want a Coca-Cola.
Do you actually do the distilling at the distillery, or?
I don't distill barely at all. I try to spend one day a week in here. Tyler Johnson's our distiller. So he's been distilling for us. He apprenticed for, gosh, probably about a year. And then he's been distilling for us full time as like the dude for just under 2. So his name's Tyler Johnson is our distiller. He was supposed to be here, and then his lady flew in his family for this weekend as a surprise. And I told him that was way more important. Sorry, you guys are all very important, but when they just got engaged and she flew out his family, I'm like, you need to leave. Like, go do that. So hopefully if we ever do one that's like we jam through a bunch of aged expressions, I'll make Tyler be around for that. But I let him off the hook for this one.
Manulele said, let him go to his love.
That's the truth. He's a nice young man. You guys will like Tyler.
It's interesting that Jane and I got completely opposite flavors on, because this one to me is a lot more meaty and less sweet than Kea was. Like Kea was very.
I think you got it mixed up, Vadim. Alec has a question.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned anything about aging. Is this not aged, or what's the story?
Yep. So it's rested for 3 months in stainless steel. I think one of the members was kind enough to share one of our aged expressions. I don't know. Did everybody get one of those?
A couple of samples. Matt gave some away, so a couple of people got them at random, but it's
cool. Oh, okay. So we do a ton of aging, and we have, Coho, which is our 2-year American oak expression. We do a bunch of, cask strength, like this is a Pinot Noir barrel. This is a Pedro Jimenez cask. We do a lot of aging. I wanted the introduction talk because I think you guys you're going to end up talking a lot about wood. I thought it was a really good space because it's what we specialize in, talking about the unabridged, unamended distillate. And if we want to come back and talk another point, and this is sort of me forcing myself into getting 2 of these, talking about aged rums, I'm all for that. But I wanted to introduce at the base of what we do. Our core is our white rums. It is about these different canes, and that's the score for us. So no, none of these are aged that we are tasting. We don't strip flavor. We don't do anything like that. It's all that. So you guys are finding Kea Manulele to be sweeter than Kea. I think the perception of sweetness is so interesting in rums because there is no difference in sugar in these, right? So it's about what flavors you associate with sweetness. And it's really interesting to see. So our tasting room, we'll do a flight of 4 white rums for some folks, and 4 different people will feel that 3 different ones are higher in sweetness or higher in proof, and they're all exactly the same. So I find it to be, it's normal to feel different ways about it.
I kind of have like a savory. This is like a sweet pork at the taste with pineapple in it.
Definitely has. I'm glad you said pineapple, because there's a pineapple thing happening right around the same time. There's another rum that actually has more of this flavor, but there is a savory note that has like the pineapple sitting next to it, like something baked on a pineapple. Which one is sweeter? Tell me.
I like to settle it the best way I know how.
You have the power. I like that.
He likes to throw his polls around.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not voting to keep it impartial. Nice.
You have an opinion. I mean, the bricks are the same. It's whichever one you think is sweeter.
Yeah. I'm waiting because there's two more. So I don't want to vote for one of these when I know one of the other ones I'm going to think is sweeter. Nice. All right. So just to drop back, and so cane number 1, cane number 2, and then we're going to jump into cane number 3, which is Mahaiula. So Mahaiula is named after the red Alua.
Kyle, can you hold those up again? Because I was
Yeah.
private messaging Vadim. I really want to have a screenshot of that. So Vadim, if you can
for sure.
go to speaker view, and because I love the difference of those colors. Those are just
Here,
blowing my
let me
mind.
do, these are going to be the 4 total. So
Just give him a second.
yeah.
You're on mute, Vadim, so just give it a thumbs up when you're done.
Yeah. 1 sec. I'm trying to save a couple of copies. I was saying that speaker view will only focus on the speaker, so I need Kyle to keep
I'm
talking.
gonna mute myself.
If you,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
if you
Hello,
pin-
hello.
If you pin him, then you won't have that issue. So just pin
True.
him or spotlight him.
There we go. Kyle?
How do we do?
Okay. Smile.
All right.
Oh, you gotta get you in the shot. Smile. There you go. Perfect. Got it.
Awesome. So Mahaiula, named after the red Alua or the red trevally. You can see there's like these purple stripes on this red cane. Really, really cool. Almost all of the canes share a name with a sea creature, and this one shares its name with a red Alua, which is not a fish you actually see caught now. Aluas are still around, but you don't see red Alua. I've been told that they never existed. I've also been told that they're one of the most revered fish ever. So the jury is still out. I am not the authority on it, but really cool. Also, if you travel to the island of Hawaii, the big island, there's a stretch of beach called Mahaiula that you should make your way to because it is holy cow beautiful. But yeah,
I've been there. There's
Yeah.
I actually I got married in Kona. So we went to the green, the white, the red, and the black. They all have the colors there. I love that.
That's
island.
awesome. Yes.
All right.
Big
you ready to
Island's
settle
really,
the
really
debate?
cool.
The group has voted, and I'm not the only crazy one. Thank you very much. Out of the first 2, the sweetest one, perception-wise, pretty close, I would say, 1/3 to 2/3.
I'm interested in that. That's good information. I like it.
Amanda, you got this? All right.
Awesome. So Mahaiula.
Real quick, I'll say maybe it was a bourbon drinker. What I was getting from it is it gave me the mouth fullness of like a double oak, very brown sugary bourbon. And even though I didn't get the brown sugar, maybe because my palate went to that, my mind went to like, oh, this is like that deep brown sugar feel. And so because I don't know if it actually was sweeter on my palate, but my mind definitely read that way because of that roundness on my palate.
I think that's exactly it. It's a function of, where you're connecting it, right? So no, that's awesome. Is that Dominic from, when are you coming back to Hawaii, man? Is he got to turn on his video. Is that Dominic from
I'll be back soon as I can.
Oh, look at you, my brother.
As soon as this baby's old enough.
I love it. Congratulations. Look how young.
Congrats on the baby, Dom.
Thank you. She's only a month old, so she's brand new.
Holy cow! Congrats.
Yes.
What's
We'll
her name?
get her over to the islands as soon as possible.
Bro, we're ready to show you a good time again. I don't know when Food and Wine will kick off, but you gotta come on back out.
I'm looking forward to it. This has been amazing. Thank you.
Is it okay? I haven't been blowing it. You're like super pro.
No, you're the super pro. I'm going in a few months, and now I'm like, wow, they're giving so much information. It's great. You're killing it.
All right, that makes me happy. I saw your name pop up big. I'm like, holy cow! Sorry guys, I'm fanboying out over here.
No.
Well, most of us
Cheers.
don't know who he is, so.
Yet. Give it time.
Oh, you guys are all gonna be stoked. Oh, yay! Oh, cool. Awesome. So I saw some popping up here. We got softer on the nose and on the palate. I think it's interesting because I get more burnt. Like this is the burnt matches one for me.
Like a burnt, like oatmeal to me.
Yeah, like this
Like
has
oatmeal
like
and milk. And sweetness to it.
This is by far the sweetest one to me.
it's so funny. Yeah. Yep, and James, I agree with you on that too, because this one kind of bookends it for me, where like, for those of you that have lived in Hawaii or anything like that, there's this like pipi kaula note at the end that's like small kind savory, like and just a little like, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know if
It's the
anybody else
highway
gets
in,
that.
the highway in Pipikala.
Kind of, yeah. Like it's got
Yeah,
this
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's a little like not. I wouldn't even say it's my favorite pipi kala. Like it's like, so for those, think like smoked and over salted pork.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this.
Yeah, I get that at the tail end. Yeah.
Interesting. And every single time with Mahayula, that's what we look for before the tails cut, is like that, like I call it the pipi kaula moment. Like there's Tyler has his own like salted meat thing he talks about with it, but yeah.
By the way, Chad and Matt are two Ohana brothers. They bring the aloha to the group. Right, guys?
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's funny story you mentioned that. Kyle actually went to high school with Noah.
No way.
Yeah, he's
That's
class of
awesome.
99. I'm class of 2000.
Oh, that's awesome. He's
Yeah.
such a good human. Were you there with his brother too? Because he's a wild man.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking through my yearbooks. I was like, I know that name. And I saw it. I was like, oh my God, that's Noah Lincoln.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So
There's
his
nothing wrong with
brother.
being a Howley. I'm just saying.
What's
nothing
up?
wrong with being a Howley.
No, hey, look, that's the only thing I can be. So
As long as we get a kama ina rate, I'm good.
you guys are now, you're all now friends and family. So you'll get shown off. That's actually just before I lose people to the 4th and 5th rums or whatever. When you visit Hawaii and decide to come up here, you have to let us know you're on the way. So I'll drop my email in the chat, but we do nothing but show people around every single day. When we have folks we know, love what it is we do, which is showing Hawaii, but also like a global hospitality and like spirits community, you have to let me know. And like, that's not sending an email after you leave. Cause like,
Oh no,
when you come,
don't
you gotta
worry.
like,
Yeah.
all right.
We're gonna talk about this after you're done with the 4 expressions, because I have a whole list of things I'm gonna talk about that.
Awesome.
So
I dig it. All right, so let's dig into papa'a then. Papa'a, the darkest of all of the cane. I should have brought it in with leaves on it. It's the one of 2 canes in the world that gets purple leaves and is a purple stalk. It's a very interesting cane. It means to burn or to hold fast. It's also like really, really skinny, a very spindly cane. But let's dive into papa'a, and then maybe we can take a couple minutes to comparatively talk about all 4 of these, and then we can go wherever you guys would like to go from there.
As we lift our last sample, I do want to take a second to do a toast and get everyone back on camera, get everyone to smile, or as many people as we can. So just want to say thank you to you for being here for this wonderful rum, and thank you to the group for joining us. So cheers to everyone. Look at the camera.
Cheers.
Look at the camera. Smile. Cheers. Got it.
Awesome. Well, that's killer. I'm all about this society. You guys have figured it out. I gotta start one of these in Hawaii.
Vadim has puts in a lot of work. We've been doing on over 60 of these. It's like right when the pandemic hit, we were very lucky that we had him in the group when we were very small, and then it really kind of grew from there. And we're just really excited. Vadim was not very nice to us over the holidays. He had to go take some time off. I didn't like that. I missed him. I missed everybody. So I'm just complaining. So 2021's holidays, you're gonna still be here, and but anyway, I digress. We'll talk about that a little bit more.
I'll tell you this. He is patient as can be, because I have a lot going on, and I'm not the best communicator when it's like, okay, we've locked it in, like I know what's happening. He's a patient man. I'm appreciative of it, so we're good.
It was fun. I complained to Matt about it, and he goes, "Yeah, that's my people. That's how they roll. I get it. Give them time. It'll happen."
I'm like, yeah, we're
Hawaiian time. I get it.
There's a lot going on. No, I'm thrilled. So what do you guys think of papa'a? And Jeffrey, I appreciate you using most of the appropriate stuff. It's hard to explain okinas and kahakos and why they matter. And I'm always stoked to see it typed in a way that's I'm appreciative of that. So thank you.
Kyle, on that subject, a couple of people asked me last time, because we're talking about the name Kohana.
Yeah.
And I kind of break it down like, okay, it's two different words. It's not Ohana with a K. It's very different. Maybe you can kind of talk about the name Kohana.
Yeah, for sure. So ko is the Hawaiian word for sugarcane, and it is meant to be two words. I know it looks like one on our logo, but it's a lowercase o. So ko with the kahako is sugarcane, Hawaiian sugarcane specifically, and hana means work. So the idea is the work of the sugarcane, or sugarcane's work. If you don't use kahakos, so like our local paper, the Star Advertiser cannot do the line over the o. And they always put my name as one word, Kohana. It actually means naked. So I get 10 or 15 aunties sending me messages about my naked rum every time the Star Advertiser does a big story. So Kohana, two words, the work of the sugarcane. Hana is both a beautiful place, and if you're fortunate, a beautiful life, because if your work is good, it's good. But yeah, that's who we are. So just from a really simple thing, it isn't a singular word, and it's meant to be the work of the sugarcane, indicating that it's very little about us and very little about production and process and all that stuff, and instead about this canoe plant and the deliciousness that we get to derive from it. So was that an okay answer, Chadwick?
Yeah, I tried to explain it. I was trying to think in my head and reverse engineer it, and it was kind of tough.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly, it's the work of the sugarcane. It's not naked. It's not, it's a funny one, because it's like you immediately go to Ohana, and then you're like, oh, they just smashed ko and Ohana, so like it's family. No, it's meant to be like, and there are better ways to express the work of the sugarcane. However, this one works as a brand, so
I had a question as I was doing some research before this this tasting, and I was looking at all the varietals that you use, and you have your core varietals that you're growing at your different locations, and you're distilling. My question is, to be able to get consistency with the specific varietals, do you ever blend? I mean, are you taking certain things, or are you just taking that one varietal that you've cut and crushed and propagated with your yeast, and then you're just distilling it, and whatever you come up with, you come up with? You're not holding different batches of it and blending them together to get the same consistent product.
No, and so I know this is super infuriating, and one of the reasons why we'll have people visit from huge liquor conglomerates, and they're like, how in the world do you do this? But we really embrace the living nature. So you might have missed it earlier when I talked about the cane varietal is on the side. We also put the harvest date. like it's a living thing. We make no qualms about it changing slightly. I could tell you year on year, like things that have changed, but I think that you'd be really hard pressed for like the general public to really dive into it unless you sat through and did like a year on year flavor analysis. So no, we're
Well,
pretty
for
okay
me,
with being like,
yeah, for me personally,
no
I
need for the consistency.
no, I like that. I like the fact that, you know, one particular bottling date is going to be different than another one. It's going to be a little bit more unique. So I appreciate that. And I think that you're on the right track.
Yeah, no, and that's, I think it's a hard thing a lot of times for people to get in spirits, but it's who we are and it's just what it is. I mean, even on our aged products, except for on the single barrels, we put harvest date. So you'll actually get like, look, this is Kokea harvested in October of 2018. Like it's a living thing. I really appreciate people that can make the same thing over and over and over again. And there's a ton of them that do it incredibly well. It's not who we are. It may never be who we are. I think embracing that like almost winemaker mentality in the rum world is, I mean, it may be hard long term for people to not be able to count on what they should get from Kohana, but like I don't know, I'd be hard pressed to say any of these somebody wouldn't be stoked to have on their bar.
And we've met a few brands in our series of tastings that just focus on when we have it, it's great, and once it's gone, it's gone. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that approach. It's a varietal approach. That's what you get with exactly what you said with winemakers. You know, the vintage from 2020 is going to be different than the 2021 or the 2019. So yeah, rather than turn people off, it's going to turn people on to buying one every release.
No, for sure.
Yeah, this is.
I
really
mean, we've definitely seen that. Like there are some rum aficionados that have, 11 different white rums sitting on their shelves that all say Kohana on them. I can't argue with that.
Did you talk to the bottle shape at all? It's a very unique bottle.
Yeah. So, and this one's so funny because it's like, this is the worst shaped bottle for a bartender ever made, ever. And my background is, my degree's in chemistry. I'm a PhD dropout, and it's because I fell in love with bartending. So I ran some wonderful restaurants and bars in town, and then I had the opportunity to do this project about a decade ago, all while still getting to moonlight and do amazing things. So in a lot of ways, this is super terrible when you think about like your day-to-day use as a bar human. But if you rearrange the way you're looking at things, and this is really why the bottle shape is what it is, we wanted something that wasn't a hula skirt and wasn't kitschy and wasn't BS. We wanted something that automatically went to thinking of it as a more luxurious good, something from Hawaii that wasn't playing on just being from Hawaii, that would look good on anybody's bar anywhere in the world, that anyone would be proud to have sitting in the center of their table. And so we went and worked to get, these are impossible to make. Making a cubic bottle is like the silliest thing ever, but it's adored. Like, and our bottles become vases, they become, lamps, they get, everybody uses them for their syrups and this and that. So to watch them be reused because they're so beautiful is awesome. We had them made specifically for us. Like, we have the little cubic and then the big ones. And it's really a function of wanting to not be a good brand for Hawaii, but instead being a good brand for Hawaii. Like, instead of, the excuse of like, well, you're good, but you're limited by this thing. Instead, we wanted to be outward facing and thinking about pushing it, away from here. And what would people be proud to have? And look, if you're going to have one bottle of white rum on your shelf, like how could you not want this? Right. And that was a big part of the thought. Like, I'm not a you know, I'm not like a Patron guy or anything like that, but you can't argue with the fact that you look at their bottles and you're, you know, you think quality, even if that may not be true. At least what's in our bottle is going to be quality. I want you to look at it hard. I don't want to cheap all the way through that. So it's designed specifically for us. We own this bugger now. And you know, it's like glass from France. That's a silly thing, but nobody is blowing, you know, nobody's making this kind of glass in Hawaii. So yes, it's Rolls Royce of glass at this point. But yeah,
Kyle, are you trademarking anything?
So the only things that are trademarked for so trademark stuff, there is a ownership on some molds, and then we have put in for the trademark. We own the trademark on Hawaiian Agricole rum. And it's not a function of wanting to limit other people doing it. It's wanting to limit people not doing it and calling it that. So there's another Agricole rum brand out in Hawaii that says Hawaii Rum Agricole. And we're totally cool with that because they're doing that product with Hawaiian cane. And our only reason for trademarking it and like getting that was if someone decides to not do it, we want to be able to call that out. I have no interest in stopping someone else from using the words. I don't want them to use it disingenuously.
Well, particularly because you just mentioned earlier that you're going from an idea, maybe go from 10,000 to up to 100,000. I think you mentioned cases. So there's going to be plans for growth. Because I noticed that, you know, that the distillation equipment that you have behind you, if that's all there is, you are somewhat limited in your production capacity.
There's another still right over here, and we have more equipment getting put in April. But yes, you're right. Right now we are our total facilities probably top out somewhere around 20,000 cases. We just planted what will end up being 250 acres by the end of the year of new farmland. So we're quite literally, I mean, a press release is probably going out on Monday or Tuesday. So we're actually from Kamehameha Schools, the largest private landowner in Hawaii. We're actually taking over a bit of their land that had another project that unfortunately had to be cashed in. And so we actually are right above Haleiwa town now, going to be farming around 220, 230 acres there. So it'll be cool.
And how will that lead to your expansion or your increased production? So if you're 20,000 cases right now, you're planting, you're going to be planting and harvesting on 250. So what does that take you to in your best guess?
So best case scenario by 2023, I have 75,000 case capacity, but that doesn't mean 75,000 cases. That means 35,000 cases in a bigger barrel warehouse. We're never, it's one thing to talk about like production capabilities, and it's another to talk about the realities of what we want. You know, I want to retire with this brand. I mean, I would love to retire in 2 years with this brand, but in 40 years, it would be really great to be looking back and be like, look, there's 500 acres of viable agricultural land on Oahu, and you're, you know, a multinational space. So 75,000 proof gallons of made alcohol a year is the current goal. Where that gets distributed, whether or not it's to white rum or to aged rum, is where it is.
Well, then that was going to be my follow-up. My follow-up question is going to be, because if you have additional production capabilities, that means you can continue with your barrel aging and barrel finishing, which to me, as you've alluded to earlier, that you are going to come back and we're going to kind of dive into that, because that's really something I'd like to explore as soon as possible.
I'm all for that. So everyone knows, there's a farm story. It goes from 1/4 of an acre to somewhere around 315 to 320 acres by the end of this year. There's a rum story that goes from 1 distillation a month to 9 distillations a week. There's a barrel story that goes from, I just moved, my office is now next to an empty room, which used to be our barrel house, which our barrel house held 90 barrels. We constructed a 1,200 barrel house throughout the last year. So you're like, all of these things play in tandem, and it's a really fun space to be able to work in, because I have to think about farming, I have to think about production, I have to think about sales, and then I have to be able to tie all of them together. So it's a really funny thing, like, you know, like being a GM of a company like this, I think kind of reads as boring, but it's a really phenomenal space to be able to be in and see everything, whether it's communicating with NOAA, dealing with, you know, ownership and big stuff like that, growth questions, or the day-to-day, like, you know, nitty-gritty of it. So yeah, the barrel house will not be big enough in under 36 months. So we already have put in for another permit for a larger barrel house. So yeah, like that's
how's permitting in Hawaii.
As long as we're recording, it is great. Super easy.
Smart man, very smart man.
The state does a phenomenal job of making sure we are all taken care of and safe, and everything is done perfectly. And I would never say anything other than that.
I'm happy to pause the recording if necessary.
The barrel aged expressions, are those at cast strength usually, or does it vary? I mean, just to make David Donahue a little jealous, looking at the sherry one is 54 proof. So I'm just wondering, are they always cast strength, or does it switch up?
So we make Kea, which is our white rum, Coho, which means to vote, select, or choose, and that is our 45% offering. So this is our sort of like quintessential, like, rum old fashioned aged rum cocktail, 2 years minimum in American oak. So that's that. And then our specialty offerings are Kila, which means strength or strong. And then we actually are the first people in the world coopering koa wood. So we have 4 koa barrels all made for us. Koa is a endemic Hawaiian hardwood. It is acacia in genus, I think genus. Yeah, genus. And we barrel age, we finish in some koa barrels, which are, for those of you that grew up in Hawaii or anything like that, they cost about $6,000 a barrel to make.
Wow.
When's your next release for Koa?
I actually just got pulled today, so we'll see.
Exciting.
And where will it be released?
Only online. So we'll just have it on online and distillery store. There won't be any for distributors this go around. Ukulele Wood is right.
Prefer for us to go to buy products from you? Is there somebody local in LA, or do you prefer us to buy it from your website directly, or who you prefer?
You know, we got dumped by our distributor midway through the pandemic. A very large distributor decided they didn't want a really small brand anymore. So we lost a lot of what we have in California. That being said, you can order from us. So we are actually able to. We have a deal with a company that ships to California, and that's the easiest way to get sort of your choice. But what's the name of the Barkeeper? Silver Lake? I think they've carried us in Orange County. There's High Times and I think that's it. I think LA has actually been pretty cruel to us, honestly, as far as retailers go. We were in the Whole Foods in DTLA for a while, but I don't think so anymore. So unfortunately, you can go to the where to find us on the website, which is probably grossly behind, or order directly from us. We are working on a new California distribution deal, so I'll hopefully have good news when we do aged tastings.
Fantastic. So we did two polls, and I didn't want to interrupt, but we ended up doing 2 polls. And I'll start with the sweetness one because I think that one's fun. You want to take a guess of which one was perceived as the sweetest out of the ones we tried today?
Manulele.
So this was a fun one for me because it was a trick question. I've never seen a three-way tie.
No, I've never seen that.
I had it hanging for like an extra 10 minutes waiting for someone to click one more on Papa. They had the two M's, and then that one, I had it at 888, and then I was paying attention, and I missed it, and then we had one more. I'm like, damn it. So I'm going to stop that one. That was a fun one. And then which one do you think was the favorite overall of just flavor-wise?
Ooh, interesting. I'm going to, am I supposed to guess or somebody else?
No, you guess.
So it's a bookend. It's either going to be Kea or Papa'a. I think that's where I see people like generally go. So I'm going to say Papa'a.
And you are right.
Yeah. Oh wow, Kea performs terribly though. That's interesting.
Yeah, this one's a step ladder.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Fun.
That's fun. But yeah, once again, I want to do a shout out to Matt Secchi. Thank you so much. He's been a huge supporter of this. I actually quoted him in the event write-up because I needed something to sell the brand. We had a nice conversation about this. He was nice enough to provide a ton from his aged sherry cast strength bottle, which is only a 375. He poured out probably more than half of it for us. So thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Can you send me Matt's address or if he's okay with that? Let's
I'm not gonna ask him. I'll send it to him.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
You can send it to me.
give you my address instead.
Smart move.
You know what? Cheers. Thank you so much for spending the evening with us. We're not by any means kicking you off, but we
I have
do
questions.
appreciate it and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. This has been absolutely fantastic. And you know, if you insist on doing a second one, I think that the group can be manipulated, and I think that can be arranged. But we really appreciate it, and thank you for all this. And cheers to everyone for being here.
Yeah. Thank you guys for spending some of your precious time. I know how valuable your time is. I'm appreciative of all of you guys. Thank you for having me.
Vadim will end the recording, but I'd like you to stay around for just a minute.